Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hope you guys are doing well. Week 11 in the NFL is behind us, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to recap the happenings and see where all the stuff that happened leaves the Seattle Seahawks going into the final 7 games of the year for them on both sides, both with their own playoff odds, playoff positioning, what the outlook around the NFC looks like, and of course with their draft pick, courtesy of the Denver Broncos, which I've already talked about a little bit, but just to put some final touches on it. All right, so let's start on Thursday night. Thursday night football. We had the Titans beating the Packers, which was, of course, the desired result because it basically ends the Packers' chances of mounting some miraculous comeback this year. They're 4-7. They've still got to play the Vikings one more time. Honestly, the Bears look like a much better team than the team that they played earlier this year. That's not going to be an easy win. I believe that they still have a couple of. I believe they still play the Dolphins, who are playing really well. So that loss to the Titans pretty much ends it. So that's obviously a positive. That's one less team in the NFC that's likely to be in the playoff race. And that gets us to Sunday, where things were a mixed bag, as they pretty much are always going to be when you're monitoring, over 10 games, which you're going to be pretty much every Sunday. Bears, Falcons, close, very close. The Bears looked good at one point. They were up by double digits at one point in this game, and then it just got away from them. They weren't able to close it. It was obviously a very competitive game. It kind of played out the way I was hoping, where Justin Fields was able to make a lot of really nice plays. Justin Fields was able to kind of spark the team to at least hang around. They just couldn't quite finish the deal. So now the Bears are actually a top 5 team in the draft. So they're picking ahead of Denver at the moment, which is not what we want. And Atlanta is lingering on the fringe of the playoff conversation in the NFC, which is also not necessarily what we wanted. So that's not a great result for us. But I believe that there are going to be future opportunities for the Bears to win a couple of games down the line, which should be good enough. Falcons, we'll talk about the Falcons a little bit later. Bills beat the Browns, which is not a huge deal to the Seahawks. Would have preferred the Browns win a game or two, but they're going to get Watson back soon, so they're probably going to win a game or two just on the back of him because he is going to be a little bit better than what they're getting out of Brissett, although Brissett's playing fairly well. The Browns still get to play at least one game against the Steelers. They pretty much always beat the Bengals, by the way, so I think they're going to find a way to another win regardless, so it's fine. Eagles, Colts, and okay. Follow my train of thought here. We're not catching the Eagles. If the Eagles had lost this game, they would have been 2 games ahead of us. They're likely to win the division still at that point, I think, because they've beaten the Cowboys head to head, and I'm sure they're going to have no problem sweeping the Giants. It's just a terrible matchup for the Giants. But that being said, the Colts played the Broncos head to head. Them losing is bad for their strength of schedule, which will boost their draft pick up. So even though it's AFC versus NFC, and nominally you always want to root for the AFC team, and I understand that. I understand that there are definitely going to be some Seahawks fans who are going to say, oh no, we can catch Philly. Philly's overrated. Philly's a fraudulent team. I don't agree with that. But if you think that, maybe there's something there. Okay, I'm not going to completely rule that out. But I think it's very unlikely, even if the Eagles are overrated, that you're going to be able to catch them when they have a 2-game or 3-game lead on you, and the remaining schedule that they're facing is a cakewalk. So, honestly, I think the Colts losing actually provides a little bit of a boost to that Broncos draft pick that is more valuable than the pipe dream of catching the Eagles. So I'm not upset about that one. That's pretty neutral to me. Jets Patriots, that went the way we wanted. The Jets played the Broncos this year, so the Jets losing is good for weakening the Broncos' strength of schedule, which is going to improve their pick a little bit. You search for little things that can help when there's an absence of obvious things, and that would be one of them. Jets losing is good just because of that. Rams, Saints, I think I think that the Rams getting pushed out of the playoff race at this point, getting pushed out of the division race completely was a positive. If they win this game, they're 4-6. They pulled even with the Cardinals at that point. It's not completely out of the question. We suspect they're going to get some of their players back, and at that point, I think you would have to at least be a little bit concerned about the possibility of the Rams having a late season resurgence. But at 3-7, Stafford's hurt again. Kupp apparently is going to be out most of the rest of the year, if not the whole year. Now you're kind of buried. And we wanted the Saints to win a game or two. I don't know if this was necessarily the game they needed to win, but we did want them to bank a couple of wins just to boost that pick down. So Denver's pick moves up. So, yeah, that's a desirable result in my mind. And, of course, you just want to root against the Rams because they're the Rams. Regardless of anything else, it's the Rams. This was the big one, though. Lions-Giants. Lions kind of dominate. Lions have now won 3 in a row, which is great because it's completely taken them off the board for having a top pick. In fact, let's jump over to Tankathon NFL real quick, and you can see that they're now picking 13th. And I know they're only a game ahead of Denver, but they also have a massive strength of schedule advantage. So them being boosted so high up, so far down the draft order is actually a good thing. I don't think this Lions team is going to get involved in the playoff race. Not really worried about that. But what I can say is that I think this loss now opens the door for the Giants missing the playoffs, because you look at the Giants, they've got a game against the Cowboys. I believe they've got 2 against the Eagles, and they've got 2 against the Commanders still. If I am recalling correctly, I think that's what they have left. It's not hard to imagine them slipping to like 9-8 or even 10-7, and then that's not good enough. Them losing this game, I think, opened the door for the Giants missing, which is significant because of what I'm going to talk about at the end of this video. But the Giants losing has definitely opened up an extra opportunity for Seattle to make the playoffs. Panthers-Ravens. Panthers hung around. They fought hard. They did what they could. Honestly, I think it's kind of an indictment of the Ravens that this game was as close as it was for basically the whole game. But they couldn't do it. Panthers lose. And they are currently sitting at the number 2 overall pick, which means that this week's upcoming game, the Broncos-Panthers, is huge. Huge for draft positioning. Maybe, I don't want to put too much exaggeration on it, almost like a game of the year. Or maybe it's like reverse game of the year. I don't know. But that's not the desirable outcome, of course. We wanted the Panthers to have their pick go down. But I don't think any of us were really expecting the Panthers to be able to beat the Ravens with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. So there you go. Commanders-Texans. This one was over quick. Commanders got a pick 6 in the first quarter and never looked back. And there was basically no drama after the halftime. So Commanders, they're going to be the spoiler team for the rest of the way. And I don't mean that in the sense that, they're not going to make the playoffs, but they're going to try to ruin other teams' seasons by beating them when they're competing for a playoff spot. No, I'm talking about they're going to be the team that might sneak into the playoffs and spoil a team like Seattle. So we're going to have to keep an eye out for them. They're only a half a game behind Seattle at the moment. Their schedule remaining is not exactly easy, but they've already beaten the Eagles, which means something. And the Texans, meanwhile, look like they are off to the races for number 1 overall. All right, we get to the later window of games, though. We got a very nice result here, of course. I already talked about it. The Raiders beating the Broncos, which is... I don't need to explain why that's good. It boosted the Broncos pick all the way up to number 5 overall. And at this point, because they lost that game, because, honestly, the Raiders at home were probably their best chance to get a win this year for the rest of the way, I feel like we're pretty well... I don't want to say locked in, but I think we are in pole position to get the a top 5 pick. If they lose this week, then we can start talking about a top 3 pick, I believe. But we'll talk about that if it needs to be talked about. And the Raiders obviously are another team that's in contention for a top pick, so them notching some wins down the stretch is good. As you can see, they're still ahead of Denver, but one win can change that. Or actually, I mean, the tiebreaker is fairly close. We got Cowboys, Vikings. I didn't. This was not my preferred outcome. I will say, if you look at the Cowboys' remaining schedule, they were probably not going to fall out of the playoff race anyway. But either way, it was more likely than the Vikings. Now, after that game, after the absolute beatdown the Cowboys put on the Vikings, maybe that's not the case. I don't know. Maybe the Vikings are frauds. I don't think they are yet. I'm not going there yet. But if you are someone who thinks the Vikings are complete frauds, this game gave you a lot of ammo to feel that way. So I would say not preferred, but we'll see what the Vikings do over the next couple of weeks, I guess. And also, as a side effect of this game, I think you can pretty much pencil in the Cowboys for a playoff spot. Maybe you already did, but with their remaining schedule, it would be really hard for them to miss. Bengals beat the Steelers, which, I mean, the Steelers, they're currently picking at 8, but they're only a tiebreaker behind Denver. We need the Steelers to find a win at some point this year. I don't know when, I don't know where, but we're going to need them to find a win or two here or there. And I mean, they were competitive in this game, right? They went to halftime with a lead. It was a good opportunity for them. Couldn't do it. We had the Chiefs and the Chargers, which to me was kind of a no stakes game as far as the Seahawks were concerned. Some people were saying the Chiefs, if they lose, are less likely to bench their starters in Week 18 against the Broncos, which that's true. That's possible. But they already have 2 losses. I think it's going to be hard for them to have everything locked up for the last week of the year. So to me, this one's just completely neutral. And the big disappointment, not that this is surprising at all, Niners blow out the Cardinals in Mexico. Not even a competitive game. Midway through the third quarter, I turned on God of War. I was done with that. And 49ers leading the division. So that's the rundown of the way things went in Week 11. So let's take a look at this thing from 2 different angles. First, the Seahawks and the playoffs. So with 7 weeks left in the season, it's become relatively clear that there are 8 teams competing for 7 spots. You have the division leaders. You have the 4 division leaders. You have Dallas, New York, Washington, and Seattle. Atlanta's lingering on the outside, but I don't buy it. I don't see it. The main reason why Atlanta's lingering is because they own the tiebreaker on us. But I'm not quite taking them seriously yet. Honestly, the Commanders and Falcons play this week, so that's actually going to be a game that maybe decides who is the spoiler team. So basically, the Seahawks can still win the division and make the playoffs that way, of course. In fact, I think that if they beat the Niners in a few weeks, they will probably win the division. But barring that, you're looking at the Cowboys, Giants, Commanders, and Seahawks competing for 3 playoff spots. So that's the stuff to monitor from here on out. Are the Commanders going to collapse? Are the Giants going to collapse? I think those are the 2 most likely outcomes. If one of those 2 things happens, we are pretty much in the clear. So it's starting to really narrow down in the NFC. Packers are done. Maybe a team like the Lions, Saints, or I mean, that's really about it, right? The Lions or Saints could get involved, but I'm not going to take it seriously until it actually happens. And by the way, we own the tiebreaker over the Lions anyway. So if they're the next most likely team to become a spoiler team, then we've got that in our back pocket over them. So that's it for the playoff stuff. As for the draft stuff, I already kind of covered it in the video I made on Sunday. But one wrinkle. The main reason why Denver's pick is so high right now is because of tiebreakers. If their strength of schedule was 5% better, they would have the number 9 pick right now. So it is 5% strength of schedule that determines Denver having the 5 instead of the 9. In the coming weeks, Denver is going to play teams like the Chiefs twice. I think the Chargers are probably going to have a winning record at the end of the year. They're playing the Ravens. Their strength of schedule is going to go up, so they need to keep losing, or they're going to start not having these tiebreakers. So that's something to watch. If they win even one game the rest of the way, I could see this. I could see this pick not getting into the top 3. I do feel like we're going to get in the top 5, just because the Broncos' remaining schedule is so tough. But the strength of schedule will go up. So basically, we can afford. They can win like one more game, and we can still get a top five pick. In fact, I think that's probably what will happen. But if they find a way to a second win, if they were able to beat a team like the Rams or the Cardinals, or maybe they steal one against a team like the Ravens, who are actually good, or the Chargers, then it's kind of that tiebreaker business could come back and hurt us a little bit. So we actually kind of need the teams that Denver has already played this year, like the Colts, to keep losing. That's actually very beneficial because it'll keep the SOS down. All right. I will see you guys later. That's the rundown of it. Oh, by the way, not that I trust ESPN FPI at all, but if you take a look at ESPN FPI right now, Seattle's projected to get the number 3 pick via Denver, and their average draft position across all simulations is 5.2, which is, of course, the third highest, which is why they have us at 3. This also goes to show you how important that Panthers Broncos game is going to be determining draft position. It really might be, if they lose to the Panthers, we're talking about the number 2 overall pick. So I will say Kubiak calling plays did make their offense a little bit better. I'm a little bit wary of the possibility of them playing well down the stretch just because of that. If they lose this game to Carolina, they might fire Hackett. Maybe the guy who promotes does a little bit of a better job motivating the team and they play a little bit better as well. That's all possible. But, I mean, what a crazy place for us to be. What a crazy place for us to be right now, where we're talking about getting a top 3 pick. And it's like realistic. It can really happen. Okay, so that's it for the rundown of Week 11. There were some good things. There were some not so good things. But we're still sitting in a pretty good spot going into Week 12. We'll talk more about Week 12 in a couple of days here. We're obviously getting off to an early start because of the 3 Thanksgiving games. But yeah, we'll run it all down and talk about what we need to see happen. So see you guys later. Go Hawks.